and the last session moderator is Associate Professor Dr. İstemi Berk from Department of Economics in Dokuz University in İzmir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
At the end of each presentation, our moderator will evaluate, and you, dear audience, you can write your questions to the chat part by specifying the person you ask your questions. At the end of the presentation, our moderator will ask questions on your behalf in our discussion part. The first presentation is belong to Aynur Yılmaz Ataman. The topic is Index Decomposition Analysis and Energy Consumption of Turkey. Screen is open.
Thank you. Thank you, Erkan. Yes, my name is Aynur Yılmaz Ataman, and I also would like to thank for the Center for Energy and Sustainable Development for this opportunity and for the organization. Let me share my screen first. I hope it will go well. I believe you can see it, right?
Yes, we can see.
All right, great, thank you. Yes, and this is the this is the title of my research, and this is the outline. Before I start, I would like to give a brief information about this presentation. It's actually a small part of my PhD thesis, which is also this part also has recently been published. So the outline of the presentation is like this. I will firstly present the objective of this presentation of this small part, and also we'll give a brief information about decomposition analysis with a focus of index decomposition analysis. And also I will present an illustrative model for Turkey. And the last part will be the summary and the conclusions. And this study has mainly two objectives. The first objective is to provide an informative framework for this methodology, because it has found an increasing place in the literature of energy studies. But the information about this methodology different studies have different information. So I would like to bring together all the information in one piece, so provide an informative source for the further studies. So this is the first part will be descriptive, but the main objective is to provide this framework. Secondly, for Turkey, this study, the methodology has recently been used since 2000, and the majority of the study is focusing on the carbon emissions, and I will use index decomposition analysis to examine the changes of energy consumption in Turkey, and also provide a little bit more information about the further studies, and also give a brief information about the weaknesses of the Turkey-related studies in the literature. And again, this is just a small part of the thesis. So the further analysis, this analysis in this presentation is just here for the illustrative purposes. To begin, the decomposition analysis is basically a descriptive technique to enable to explain of an observed change of an aggregate indicator into its driving forces. So these driving forces can be output increase, sectoral distribution, or in other words, the shares of the sector in total value added, sectoral energy intensity, population, or emission coefficients. These forces can be changed in accordance with the variable of interest. And the analysis is divided into two: structural decomposition analysis and index decomposition analysis. Structural decomposition analysis has the strength in terms of providing the linkages between consumption and production, because it's based on the input-output tables, but also the fact that it is based on input-output tables is also some kind of weaknesses, because the availability of these tables are limited, so the analysis period can be difficult and can be limited. And also the formula is a little bit more difficult than the formula which is used in index decomposition analysis. I will now pronounce index decomposition analysis as IDA to save some time. IDA can be conducted differently from the structural decomposition analysis with annual time series, which gives a huge flexibility in terms of the analysis and also the formula. Formula is much more simpler and also much more flexible in terms of adapting the analysis, the methodology to different concepts and different subjects. So it has a strong affinity with index numbers, which some of you have already familiar with. The index numbers actually is analyze the contribution of quantity and price levels to changes in the aggregate commodity consumption. So similar index decomposition analysis focus on the other driving factors to analyze the changes in energy consumption or in other areas. So the decomposition can be carried out in two ways: multiplicative and additive decomposition. Multiplicative decomposition actually is to analyze the ratio change. On the other hand, additive decomposition focus on the change of a difference between the different values of the aggregate indicator. So this graph here, you can see that the IDA methods are divided into two: methods linked to Division index and methods linked to Las Perez index. Based on these four criteria, methods linked to Division index have been the most preferred method in the literature. And amongst these criteria, two of them are very important: theoretical foundation, ease of use. Theoretical foundations basically refer to the being factor reversal, and it means that leaving no unexplained residual in the change. So all the change can be explained by the decomposition. So methods linked to Division index are in that sense met this criteria. Ease of use is also important because when the number of factors, driving forces, as I explained in the first slide, increases, the formula gets more complicated in the methods linked to Las Perez index. On the other hand, the formula stays constant in the methods linked to Division index, even if the driving forces increases. This is especially the case for the studies in the emission, to analyze the emission change. So in that sense, amongst the methods linked to Division index, log mean Division index is the most preferred method because of its simplicity, and also I use this method to analyze the energy change in Turkey. To give a little bit of historical perspective, the period, the emergence of this methodology goes back to 1970s when the oil crisis emerged. But actually the refinement phase, which is after 1995, is very important because it is the time period that the weaknesses of this methodology were overcome. By saying weaknesses, of course, as I explained before, the residual problem has been the main one, and also being able to deal with the zero values and the negative values in the data set was also a kind of weakness in the previous studies, and it also overcome by the other methods which have been developed until after 1995. And log mean Division index, which are based on Division index, are also amongst these methods. And as I said, energy supply and demand and energy-related carbon emissions have been the main areas that this methodology have been applied. But other than that, the material flows and the materialization, like the change in water consumption or the change in soil extraction, are also kind of area in which this methodology can be used. Also, national energy efficiency trend monitoring is another area, and I think in the European Union and Canada have some examples to use this methodology to analyze the changes in energy efficiency, because it allows us, I will explain later on a little bit in more detail, but it allows us to see or to distinguish the structural and activity impact from the real changes coming from the energy efficiency. So in that sense, it is also used in that kind of area. And also cross-country comparisons is another area to use this methodology. And lastly, it has been used in prospective and scenario analysis. Focusing on Turkey, we see that the first study which was using this methodology carried out in 2003 by Kadir Has University, and it focused on the change in carbon emissions, and it conducted by using the refined Las Vegas index. But later on, these studies are mostly used by the log-mean division index, as you can see in the method column, and the majority of the studies focus on the change in emissions. The most common, there are two common things about these studies. The first one is all the studies are based on the national energy balance tables in terms of the energy data. And another common point is that the main finding of these studies is that the activity effect, which is actually the effect of production increase, impact of production increase on the energy consumption or the change in carbon emissions, has been the dominant factor behind the changes of these energy consumption or emission change. So this is in terms of the second common point. When we see this graph, it's very obvious that the energy consumption and the gross change in energy consumption and gross value added goes hand in hand. Like this graph shows us the period between 1990 and 2020, and in this 30-year period, there are only 10 years that energy consumption decreased. By the way, I should explain a little bit more detail. The energy consumption here is given for final energy consumption change and also industrial energy consumption change. And similarly, value-added growths are given for industry and the gross value added. As I said before, energy consumption decreased in only 10 years. And in 5 of them, as you see, like 1994 and 1999, 1998, in 5 of them, the consumption decreased because the gross value added decreased as a result of the economic downturns. But in other 5 years, for example, in 2014, energy consumption decreased while the gross value added increases. But this is not very common. This is very unique. So in terms of, there's another literature called decoupling. So this is actually in terms of this terminology, this is actually an absolute decoupling example between energy consumption and the growth. But this is very temporary and this is very unique. So as this graph shows us that the energy consumption and the gross value, the changes are going hand in hand, very parallel to each other. And this is the model that is used to analyze energy consumption of Turkey. To save time, I will not go into detail of the formula, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer in the question part. But basically, so this is this part shows us the application of the log-mean division index. So this is the E represents the energy change, and this shows the activity effect, this shows the structural effect, and this shows the intensity effect. This is the decomposition actually, and the activity effect means that the impact of changes in the production activity on the change of energy demand or energy consumption. Structural effect gives us the impact of changes in output shares of the sectors on energy consumption, and lastly, intensity effect is the impact of changes in the sectoral energy intensities on the final energy demand. And the data, I will explain the data that I used in this study in more detail, because as I explained before, in the literature, not only in Turkey, in the other literature which are carried out for other countries as well, the national energy balance tables have been the main source of data for this kind of analysis. And it is very understandable, because this is also the actually main source of data for other energy studies. But on the other hand, it has some weaknesses. So I used the word input-output database to carry out this analysis. And the main reason I use the word input-output database is the environmental accounts, which includes the energy data as well. And the energy data in this database have two major transformations. The first transformation is carried out from the territorial principle to residential principle, which is basically to make the data set align with the system of national accounts. And because the system of national accounts are the system for which all the GDP statistics are based on. So basically, it makes the principles are the same for the energy data and the economic data. So territorial principle actually is the, if you have, I think it's clear, but if you have question, let me explain it later on. And the other transformation is the sectoral classification. And it basically make bridge the sectoral breakdowns in the energy balance tables to split them into the sectors corresponding to major revision to classification. So basically, it makes it set up the link between the economic and energy information in a more coherent way and in a more sound way. That's why I use the word input-output database, and also this explains why the analysis is covering only 2000 and 2014, because the latest release of this database, which is 2016, covers only this period. And update the studies regarding the updating of this database, I think have been carried out, but I don't have the latest information. But I think the OECD has some kind of input-output database, so it might be another alternative to update the time periods. In terms of data, I need to explain two other weaknesses or constraints. The first one, again, related with the energy accounts. Energy accounts in this database actually have two alternatives. One of them is the gross energy use, and the other one is the emission relevant energy use. In terms of this study, to carry out this study, I use the gross energy use. However, it actually includes the intermediate consumption of energy by industries. So it basically includes the coal, which is consumed for power generation, or crude oil, which is used in refineries. So both energy commodities are included. So it's actually double counting. But since the analysis is focusing on the change of total consumption of energy resources, it is not considered as the major constraint to carry out the analysis. And another weakness about this data set coming from the socioeconomic variables, which is included in the same data set. For this illustrative example, it is not, it wasn't a major constraint, but if the analyses were carried out for the subsectors, like subsectors under the manufacturing industry, so there was a problem because the sectoral shares in the manufacturing industry has been kept constant since 2002, but this requires some adjustments, but this is not the subject of this example, but if you are interested, I'm more than happy to explain what kind of adjustments I did to carry out the analysis for the manufacturing industry. So the last slides are reserved for, of course, the results of the analysis. Before I explain the decomposition of the total energy consumption in Turkey, the chart in the left part gives us the change of the sectoral shares in energy consumption. As we see that total energy consumption between 2000 and 2014 increased 59% during that period. And the major increase into the main sectors that has experienced the major increase of energy consumption have been the other industry, which include the mining, carrying, and electricity, gas, and water supply, and also services sector, which, as we see that the total change in the of the total energy consumption has been 155%, and for the other industry it is 94%. On the other hand, the increase of the energy consumption in manufacturing industry has been limited with 22%. That's why the share of manufacturing in the total energy consumption decreased from 50% to 39%. And the decomposition shows us that the change of energy consumption, the sources of the change of the energy consumption, we see that the activity effect, which is shown in the by the blue column, has been the major contributor to the change. And actually, if all other factors like the structural effect and intensity effect has remained the same, the total increase coming from the effect of production increase has been 71% instead of actual level of 59%. As we see from the orange column, that the structural effect has also had an increasing impact on the energy consumption. To remind what the structural effect, it is the impact of the changes changes in the sectoral shares in total output. So at 5% increase, or 5% of the total change in energy demand came from the changes of sectoral shares. On the other hand, improvement in the energy intensity, which means that the decrease in the energy intensity has a decreasing impact of the energy consumption during the same period. If there is no improvement in energy intensity, the energy consumption will be 26% higher than the actual level. So the components of the structural and intensity effects are also valuable to give us some more insight about the change. As I explained before, the highest increase in energy consumption during that period occurred in services and other industry. However, when we look at the structural and intensity component, we see that the increase actually came from the decrease of energy intensity in these two sectors. When we look at the services here, the energy intensity increased 41%, and in the other industries, energy intensity increased 16%. And these increases has an increasing effect on the total energy consumption, 12% and 9% respectively. On the other hand, as I explained before, energy intensity improvements resulted with energy savings, and the major source of this energy saving came from the energy intensity improvement in the manufacturing industry. We see that the energy intensity decreased 38% in the manufacturing, which resulted 49% of decreasing intensity effect. Of course, the structural component of the manufacturing, as the shares of manufacturing increased 13%, it also contributed to 11% of increase in total energy consumption, but the gains from the energy intensity is higher, than the structural impact. So as I explained before, that's why the total change in energy intensity has a decreasing impact on the energy consumption. So this analysis was carried out for the period-wise, like between the period 2000 and 2014. It can be also carried out annually. So when we look at the annual changes, we see that structural impact, which are shown in again the orange color, are very limited. But on the other hand, the intensity impact and the activity impact, which are blue, are very dominant in terms of changing in terms of the on the changes in energy consumption. And in 2000, and there are only 3 years that total energy consumption decreased, which are 2011, 2008, and 2009. And it is only in 2008 that the energy intensity was the main factor behind the decrease of energy consumption.
Aynur, I guess we are already over time. Could you please wrap it up?
Yeah, sure.
I missed it. Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I'm already at the last slide. So to summarize, actually, I think it's important because just to focus on this last part, this methodology can be beneficial to distinguish the impacts of different factors on the changes in energy consumption from each other, and it can be developed to carry it out at multi-level rather than on one-stage analysis, and combining the findings of decomposition of changes in emissions and energy consumptions can be actually more valuable to guide the energy policies. And this is the last sentence of my presentation. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Do we have time, Erkan, for questions, Q&A? Because we are already over time, I guess. I also missed. Yeah, I can do that if you want. How much time I have? How much time do I have? Like 5 minutes? I can be fast.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, Aynur, could you please show the screen again?
Yeah, sure.
I want to talk a little about one thing. You spent so much time, Aynur, on the theoretical background of the index decomposition analysis. So it is better if you keep your concentration on your own work, because anyone who wants to learn about that could easily find it, right? My first question is about the not the question but suggestion about the decline in energy consumption during 2013. You said it is something to do with decoupling, though decoupling is a long-term phenomena. Okay, so it is nothing to do with 1 year. There could be several other reasons why, while gross value added is increasing and energy consumption is decreasing. So decoupling is not only related with 1 year. This is one warning. The second thing, now you haven't mentioned what are you doing differently from the literature. It would be great in the next presentations or when you convert this into a paper. I don't know if you have published it or not, but if you convert this into a paper, it's best if you can explain what you are doing differently than the literature. Because in the literature, although there are a few studies compared with emissions, there are still some studies related with energy consumption, right? LMDI analysis applied on energy consumption. And you need to work on it, I guess, to clarify your contribution. About your results, you said that services sector has, the energy intensity of the services sector has increased by, yes, this table, 41%. So what was the reason of that?
Actually, yeah, the aim of the methodology doesn't give us the reason, but yes, I know
the methodology. So it doesn't give you anything about the reason of that, but you should definitely discover it out. Okay, what was the reason for that? Because services sectors is known to be less energy intense than manufacturing, and it has increased 41%. I know it. You need to concentrate on the possible reasons in Turkey. And the second thing about the manufacturing industry, it declined by 38% over 14 years or 15 years. Still, what was the reason for that? Because in manufacturing industry, there are subsectors, right? Textile industry, food industry, and so on and so forth. In the manufacturing industry, there are some energy intense sectors, and less energy intense sectors.
Yeah, I
If
know. Yeah.
the share of less energy intense sectors increase, the total energy intensity of the manufacturing sector will decrease. It does not necessarily mean an improvement. It can mean also a structural change within the manufacturing sector. So you provide us some numbers, you need to work on the policy implications, what we need to understand from these numbers. These are my suggestions to you, okay?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, may I add up some more points?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the difference from the existing literature I actually explained in the article, but I didn't have time to put them together properly. I'm so sorry for that.
No worries.
I'm so bad at using the time. And also, yes, the manufacturing, I also focus on the manufacturing industry. And as you said, it comes from different factors. But again, it is the second stage of the study, and I didn't have the ability to give place on this.
No worries. But in general, if you want to convert this to a paper, it would be beneficial for you to concentrate on the contribution and the output, your policy implications of your outcomes from your analysis. And
I will thank you for all of the other recommendations and comments.
No worries.
Thank you.
No worries.
Can I ask a simple question?
Yeah, sure, Şener Hocam.
Yes, in your one of your tables, the construction industry share is 1%. Are you decoupling? Just construction industry use most of the manufacturing industry's product. So how can you relate? Just how can you single out when you say construction industry? How you confine yourself for the energy consumption?
So may I open the slide again, and then you can maybe just. Because I couldn't catch the. You mean this part?
No, one slide before.
This one.
Yes.
The 4% in the total energy consumption. You mean, right?
Okay, and that 4% is quite small because most of the construction industries using the product of manufacturing industries or other industries. How you can really decouple them?
Actually, you are very right to take attention to that part, because the energy, as I explained, that energy data which is consumed by different sectors are classified in a very unique way in the data set, like the word input output table. So yes, and the construction sector is actually using much more energy because of the linkages, but here the classification is different. So that's why it's like the 4%. As this is what I interpret actually. So the linkages, the energy consumption coming from the materials that are consumed by the construction service are not included in that.
So in that case, is it a bit confusing, really? Just or you have to define your bracket of when you say manufacturing industry. It's quite a large industry as well. If you put in the pieces, really, just we can have several layers for the manufacturing industries, and which one is going to relate to others. Don't you think it's important for this assessment?
Yes, yes, you are right. It is important, and what I understand your comment, or at least I take from your comment, is that I should explain more what is the construction included and what is the manufacturing includes in that.
Absolutely.
In that table. Thank you. Thank you
for
for
that.
Much
more comfortable to follow if you have some definitions. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Berk, is your turn.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Berk.
Okay.
You have a gamer chair. Nice. I like it.
Thank you. My topic is short-term forecast of Turkey's electricity demand. I want to start with what is machine learning, but before the start, I want to say the concepts are like Matrushka, the artificial intelligence, then machine learning, then artificial neural networks, and deep learning, etc. You can imagine like that. Various algorithms are used to understand and solve the problems. An algorithm is set of instructions that converts input to output. For some cases, we cannot produce algorithms, but we know what the input is and what the output should be. In these cases, we want the program to learn from the data and create the algorithm automatically, and we apply to machine learning. Machine learning is a process for discovering necessary models to understand the system behavior. Machine learning also forms the basis of artificial intelligence algorithms. Artificial intelligence algorithms are dynamic systems and must have the ability to learn. Machine learning models can be predictive or descriptive. The models have two phases, the learning phases and the problem-solving phases. The learning stages are also divided into supervised, semi-supervised, and unsupervised. Data sets may differ from each other, while the available data can be labeled correctly. Sometimes this labeling may not be possible. The variability in the data sets may require the learning styles to change for a successful result. In supervised learning can be briefly defined as machine learning with correct answers. For this type of learning, the data must contain certain informations. As you can see, it's separates to regression and classification. It's using in both problems. In supervised learning, there are only inputs and there are not marked with outcomes. In this type of learning, the model learns to group the inputs, and this is called self-organization or adaptation. To do this, it tries to identify existing pattern or trends in the input data. In statistics, this is called density estimation. Also, there is semi-supervised learning. Labeling each X with Y is sometimes not cost efficient. In these cases, algorithms that can work with small amount of labeled and large amount of unlabeled data. Unsupervised learning using in clustering, K-means, fuzzy C-means, and neural networks, of course. These are the algorithms that type of learning is using. Artificial neural networks imitate biological neural networks. To understand ANNs, we must first understand the structure of the biological neurons. This cell consists of a cell body, axon, dendrites. The end of the axon divides into many branches containing synapses that connects with the dendrites of the other neurons. Neurons produce electrical impulses that cause synapses to release chemical signals. Artificial neural networks are used in many fields, from image process to speech recognition and games, of course. Although they are widely using today, but not always. Some of the critical reasons for their prevalence are the increase in the amount of data, the increase in processing power, of course, and developing new algorithms. The basic artificial neural network is called perceptron. Perceptron are based on neurons called the threshold logic unit, TLUs. These are simple neurons with a single input unit and activation function. Perceptrons input pass through special structures called input neurons, where is the input there. If the biological neurons often stimulate each other, their connections get stronger. Based on this principle, Hebb's rule was developed, saying that the weight of the link between neurons fired together increases. Perceptrons are trained according to this rule. The neurons which reduce the error increase the weight of their connections. When artificial neural networks contain one or more hidden layers, they are called deep neural networks. The most critical step in developing DNNs was the backpropagation method. This method is still actively using today. It calculates the gradient of errors according to each parameter in the model. While establishing deep learning models, the person who designed the model should decide on many parameters. These are the hyperparameters, called hyperparameters. The number of layers, the number of neuron set layers, and which activation you will use, etc. In many cases, the choice is entirely determined by the experience of the designer and current traits, of course. On creating the model, it's necessary to decide how deep it will be. Even networks with a single hidden layer can handle complex operations with enough neurons, but deep networks are more efficient for complex problems. The number of neurons in layers is vital to the model's success. Input and output neurons depends on the data set. In hidden layers, the general opinion is that the number of neurons in each layer decreases. Recent works has been shown that having an equal number of neurons can also increase performance. You will see in next slides. Batch size is the data size in the model with process at once is limiting. Is using mostly image processing and or very large data sets. The error values used in this process can be calculated using many methods called loss functions. The most commonly used ones for regressions are mean squared error, mean absolute error, mean bias error. And for image processes, support vector machines and cross entropy. The learning process of the model is an optimization, so it requires optimization functions, which is SGD, stochastic gradient descent, ADA grad, delta, ADA delta, ADAMAX. Each of these algorithms has advantages and disadvantages. SGD is the default method in deep learning. It works slowly and not good for image processing. In the ADA grad algorithm, the learning rate gradually decreases and learning can stop over time. ADA delta, on the other hand, does not have the rapid learning decline that ADA grad has. One of the most used optimization algorithm today, ADAM, is the current trend. Works similarly to SGD but uses gradient moving average. The activations functions are needed for nonlinear model. The value obtained from matrix multiplication is linear, and activation functions converted to a nonlinear. The standard activations functions are sigmoid, Tanash, and ReLU. Leaky ReLU, ELU, and SELU also derivated functions in last times. Recurrent neural networks are a type of autoregressive moving average model that neural networks suitable for some time series. This time series must contain moving average components, trends, or should be state dependence. The most significant differences between RNNs from other deep learning algorithms is their memory. RNNs establish relationship between inputs and remember relationships have found. The most critical problem for RNN
Berk, we are moving a little like over time again, so could you please pace it up a little bit?
I will.
And maybe just move to the results and we can discuss about the results.
Okay. I want to show what is LSTM. LSTM has unique method that have gates, 4-gate gates, input and output gate. It's the problem in RNN. They can't remember for a long time. There is a gradient vanishing problem. LSTM solved that problem. I want to talk about little bit deep depth concept. In this model, depth means hidden layers between the input and output. If you have more than one hidden layer, that in LSTM, that means you have stack LSTM. Why we need electricity demand forecast? Everyone knows that electricity cannot store, and it should be simultaneously producing, transmitting, and consuming for millions. That's the problem. I will cut the slides. I want to talk about my future selection. Turkey is relatively large geography and crowded population, but the distribution population is not homogeneous. It's concentrating in the some regions, some climates. As you can see, the west sides and mostly coastal areas. Many different prediction models have been developed for many countries, but they aren't prophetic in common practice. Electrical system is very complex, so many conditions should be considered. I thought the consumption related directly the climate and calendar effect in short term. Then I create the model. These are my raw data. All of it population weighted, precipitation, temperature, irradiance surface, top of the atmosphere, snowfall, snow mass, cloud cover, and air density. That's my dependent variable, the consumption. Exists transparency platform established in 2019, so I don't have the back data, and my methodological data cuts in the end of the 2019. So I put these 3 years in my model. These are my correlation heat map. Independent variables should be correlated with the dependent variable, but it shouldn't be highly correlated with each other because it's causes the noisy learning in model. Forecast is regression, so I have to look to regression statistics before apply the machine learning or artificial neural network. OLS regression is an easy way in the Python for that. When we look at the first result in according to p-values, the 88 variable is insignificant because its p-value is higher than the threshold value, which is 5%, and I should drop it. When I drop it, everything is okay. Then the data must be normalized, must be scaled. All artificial neural networks and machine learning algorithms are sensitive to that. If you don't do that, you probably multicollinearity problem will be occur. I choose min-max scaler in Python. In that method, the data will scale 0 to 1, between the 0 and 1. I choose accuracy validation metrics as an mean absolute error. Then I split my data as a train and test, 2 week for test, and others are training data. The train data separate the 20% for validation. In deep learning model, these are my first model and was built using the Keras API in Python. 1 neuron for each independent variable in the model should be in the input layer, and 1 neuron for each you want to forecast in the output layer. So these are 12 and 1 for me. In each hidden layer has 15 neuron and ReLU activation function when we decide the number of hidden layers. 4 hidden layer is the best for me. Then I determine the optimal activation functions. Sigmoid and Tanash used with Glorot normal weight initializer because every activation function is different and needs a unique initializers, weight initializers. ReLU element, DK ReLU used with HI normal, CeLU used with Decon normal. Then ReLU was the best for that model. Finally, I decide the number of neurons in hidden layers. 15 neurons in each layer was best for that model. Then I established the LSTM model. Again, I choose the hidden layer number of hidden layers. 2 is best for that model. Tanash activation function was slightly better than others. And 115 neuron in each hidden layer was best. These are my results. In deep learning model, it's a little bit noisy, but not a problem. Also, there is no overfitting or unknown fitting situations in both models. The deep learning model was more accurate than the LSTM because I think LSTM needs a huge data and works with 3D matrices. So maybe my data set was not enough for LSTM model, or I don't know. Deep learning are quite basic in LSTM, but in LSTM forgate has forgate gate. Forgate gate can cause the can't remember the model, the important informations in the data set maybe.
We need to wrap it up, Berk. We are
Okay,
very over
that's all.
time.
That's all.
That's all. Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. So what was the number of observations in your data set?
My observation.
The number of observation. What was the size of the data set? It is the hourly electricity consumption.
38,000, more than 38,000.
So LSTM must be fitting to this 38,000. There is something related with the OLS regression, I suppose. What was the number 8 parameter that you dropped?
Number 8, snowfall.
Snowfall parameter, okay.
Yeah.
Have you considered the price parameter? Electricity price parameter?
I don't consider the price parameter. Price is not changing in this year's. Yeah, changing, of course, changing, but
it is changing.
not today, like today's.
Yeah, I know, but since 2016, right? Your
Yeah.
data, no, 2019. Since 2019, it is like changing. If you normalize it, it will be changing. So you can also add it. And you didn't forecast it up to this point. You just try to find out which model fits best to the historical data. So
Yeah.
the next step will be forecasting, right?
Yeah, but I didn't find the updated data after the 2019.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Then you will have an in-sample prediction and out-of-sample forecasting. That's not a problem. You can just continue with your forecasting and see how your forecasting fits with the actual data until 2019. And then you can just forecast for the future, right? I'm not particularly experienced in the neural network framework, but you can do that, I suppose.
I have to give a
Yeah,
independent variable for the forecast. If I don't have independent variable, I can't forecast the values.
Yeah, your independent variables are actually
For
12
the next years, I don't
next
have.
year's. Okay. Okay. So basically, it's about prediction. Okay. Again, back, I want to say same thing to you. What I said to I know you spent a lot of time explaining the theoretical background of the neural network framework, and it takes a lot of like time in your presentation. So please be careful about that. Okay, because
Okay.
most of the time you are just presenting to experienced people, so they know about neural networks. So maybe you
Of
can
course.
just skip your methodology in 2 or 3 pages or 2 slides, not more. And then you also need to mention the literature, because there are some literature related with forecasting using artificial neural networks. And you need to clarify what you are doing, let's say, differently from the literature. Okay.
I can say easily my data set is unique population weighted methodological data.
So, are you a master's degree student or PhD?
Yeah, master degree.
Master's degree, but in any case, just please be advised, unique data set is not considered to be a contribution, scientific contribution to the literature. Okay, you need to do something else, either with your modification in your model. For instance, instead of OLS, you can use GLS, for instance, in the first stage, and so on and so forth. So in any case, just you need to find a gap in the literature, and unique data set is not really enough to convince reviewers.
Yeah. And also the information about the limited data set to deep learning and LSTM model. I put the differences for that situation.
Okay, that's great.
Many
That's great.
Many LSTM models used for electricity consumption forecast, but I think they are not enough accurate. And I put the deep
that's
learning
great.
is
Then that's great. Then you need to polish it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you need to emphasize it a little bit, because from your presentation we couldn't see it. But in any case, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
If there are any questions from the audience, we can take it right now. We are already over time, so I don't want to wait.
Okay.
Make the audience wait a lot. I guess
Thank you
we
very
don't,
much,
right?
Berk.
Thank you.
Çağla Özçelik, screen is yours.
Okay, thank you.
So Çağla is the last presenter.
I was the last, but I have to change the.
Yeah, we changed the queue. Sorry.
Okay. No worries.
I have a meeting. That's why I'm sorry.
No worries.
Okay, can you see my desktop
Yeah, we
now?
can.
Okay.
We can.
I am Çağla Özçelik. I'm a master degree student at the Kütahya Health Sciences University. Actually, this bibliometric analysis isn't my main topic, but it's a preliminary research for my own thesis. I mean, these results support my thesis. I will mention why we choose these topics and what is building syndrome, what is a well-building standard, and the purpose of our study and the analysis results. and I will finish with the conclusion and the recommendation. You know, people with the mental health problems, they face death rate 2.2 times higher than the general population. And they have an average of 10 years less life expectancy, and they account for 30% of the global disease burden and constitute approximately 32 of the years spent with disability. And now approximately 2/3 of the individuals with mental health problems, they are in employment now. I mean, when we consider the employee population, there is a 2/3 of unhealthy employee. They are working, they are in workplace now. In Turkey, Ministry of the Health strategic plan, they added some indicators such as number of health personnel trained in the scope of preventive mental health services, a number of persons attending public training within the scope of preventive mental health services. Additionally, the World Health Organization global action plan, they stated that principle and targets for the protection of mental health of employees, and stated that all sectors should be cooperated. So what is well-building standards? It's so new topic for the world, for our country. I will try to explain why all the sectors began to start focus these standards. We are talking from the morning, there is a global warming, decreases in energy resources, pollutions. So all these reasons, especially the building and construction sectors, started to focus on the sustainability. And such as BREEAM, LEED, WELL, so we can count more, standards has established for the sustainability and efficiency. So why we choose the WELL standard? Why not BREEAM, not LEED? Because BREEAM and LEED measure the ecology, water, energy use, air quality, use of indoor materials. But on the other hand, WELL standards focus on the comfort, mental health, and well-being of the building occupants, building users, which is not emphasized enough in the BREEAM and LEED. So WELL is a performance-based certification system that measures, certifies, and monitors, and it's audited by the independent organization. It was first released in 2014 by the International Well Building Institute in USA. Buildings are designed by considering the activity level of users, their eating habits, their mental states, their sleeping patterns, and their productivity and other factors affecting the performance. There are 10 categories. I don't want to mention all of them, but air, air, water, nourishment, light, movement, family comfort, sound, materials, mind, this is my topic, and the community. In 10 parts, you are taking the points in the standard. This is a mind scorecard. I mean, there is a requiring points. You have to require this needed. If you have health education system in your workplaces, but if you don't have connection to nature, you cannot take the certificate. There is a levels of the certificates, silver, gold, and platinum. As you can see, there is a platinum certified office in New York. What about our country? We don't have any well-certified buildings in the Turkey because it's so new, because it has released in 2014. But there's just one pre-certified buildings in Istanbul. Like WELL, BREEAM, and LEED, in Turkey, we have a BES certificate, but when we examine the including part, there is not elements directly the mental health about comfort, well-being of the building users. So what is sick building syndrome? Sick building syndrome is work-related skin, respiratory, mucous membrane complaints of workers, as well as general symptoms such as headache, weakness, or poor concentration. Our purpose to analyze the studies examining the effect of well-building standards, sick building syndrome on mental health of the employees. So we analyzed the studies conducted between 2014 and 2022, including the title of well-building standards, sick building syndrome, and psychological effects were examined. Our limitation was that only studies on workplaces and worker have been selected. I mean, we didn't take the residential researchers. In addition, the studies carried out since launch year 24 of the well-building standards. When we look at the country distribution, sick building syndrome researchers, we can see the weight in China, Slovenia, and Taiwan. And when we see the year distribution, there is a, oops, sorry. Am I still here?
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay. Year distribution, we can see there is a weight in 2024, 21, and 22. Actually, I associate that with the pandemic, COVID pandemic. When we see the topics of there is a prominent titles such as risk factors causing SPS, sick building syndrome severity scale studies, and prediction mapping studies, relationship with the factors such as lifestyle, genders, race, and the most common symptoms, prevalence, and relationship between the sick building syndrome and absenteeism. When we look at the well-building standard studies, I mean, there are so handful studies about well because it's so new standards. We see again, there's a weight in 2022 and 2021. I still associate, this is my opinion about the pandemic, because all workplaces understand the importance of the human resources. That's why they try to find better workplaces. How they can make a better workplaces for the workers. As a conclusion, the importance of the burden of the mentally unhealthy employees on the economy has just begun to understood. In contrast of the importance of the subject, there is a very few research had been done on the building effects of the workers' mental health. You know, we are not working like industrial revolution, so we should make healthier workplaces for our workers. Rewards and punishment system is not effective now for all workers, today's employees. So my recommendation, improving the mental health of employees, that is improving the workplaces, with this kind of building standards can alleviate national and even global economic burden. After the results, my hypothesis is that well-building standards compliance with these standards can affect sick building syndrome, mental health, and job satisfaction. Thank you very much. If you have a question, I can take.
Yes, I will start from the very last slides. So first of all, about recommendation, Çağla, I would not suggest these kind of recommendations that you couldn't find out from your analysis, because this is a preliminary study yet. It is not finished yet.
Yes.
There are
yes,
some
yes.
there are some of my suggestions which would make your paper very interesting, because I really liked your paper, really liked your idea at the
Thank you.
beginning to begin with. Okay, the idea first of all about the bibliometric study. So you search for some words in the titles of the papers,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Mhm.
So which kind of papers? It is in the WOSH index, Web of Science indexes, or in Google Scholar? What?
Yeah, the most of them it was a cross-sectional study. I didn't put this here because I couldn't finish the analysis. Some of them review, but most of them was the cross-sectional study.
But it wasn't indexed in the SSCI, right? All of the papers were indexed in Social Science Citation Index, is it? No.
No, I don't think so. I
No,
mean, I
you don't
searched
think
from
so.
the
Okay,
Google,
yeah.
Google Scholar.
Okay, you search from the Google Scholar. Okay.
Yes.
And maybe you should also include keywords, not only the titles. Keywords would
Yeah.
be beneficial to increase your sample size. This is the first suggestion. The second suggestion, the 24th slide of yours. So you suggest that this preliminary, can you come to the 24th slide, please, Çağla? 24th?
Yes,
No, this is 23rd.
okay, I opened
Yes,
it.
this one. So according to this slide, you seem to have a confidence that well-building standard increase the number of papers in the sick building syndrome and mental health and job satisfaction. In order to see that, you need to have a data set covering the period before 2014 in order to see the difference, right? For instance, you are searching for sick building syndrome as a title. Great. Sick building syndrome or mental health, for instance, as a title. So there should be a lot of papers also before 2014 when well-building standard has been launched, right?
Yes.
So you can compare the number, how the number has changed. You can run some tests, hypothesis tests, if it is a significant increase or not after this standard has been launched.
Yes, yes,
So
yes, hocam.
please do that.
Okay,
Please
okay, hocam. Okay, I understand.
increase the year of observation. This is
I was trying to explain in the year distribution, but I didn't explain it.
I totally understand your explanation. It
Yeah.
still doesn't, we don't know still. This is your interpretation. If it is
Yes,
caused
hocam.
by pandemic or not, I don't know. So in order to have a formal way, you need to include some parameters, right? And besides, in the bibliometric studies, there are thousands of different ways of representing your results, like the maps. For instance, you can link to like geographic locations where we observe more mental health and the studies in that region, you know? So you can just link, you can just provide more links. I know that this is a preliminary study. I'm just suggesting you for the future studies.
Thank you very much, hocam. I am noting that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So any other questions from the audience? Şener hocam, you?
Yes, actually, I was wondering,
sure.
Çağla, what's your background?
Okay, it's complicated, but actually I'm working as an occupational safety specialist in an automotive factory now. But my bachelor degree.
What's your education?
But my bachelor degree is I'm a nurse from Yeditepe University.
You're a nurse from Yeditepe University.
And then I did my master again, occupational safety. Then I did my master.
What sort of expertise you've got in this team to draw these conclusions and recommendation?
My opinion.
No. What's the size of the team and who are in the team with the expertise to really withdraw this kind of conclusions?
I'm doing a lot of work in this factory, if you mean that. Yeah, I'm doing double major here. I'm occupational safety nurse and occupational safety expert. If you mean that, if I didn't understand wrong.
Well, it's a quite the dangerous field to be in, really.
Yes,
Just in the conclusion, you need to be very much careful. The description of sick building and definition of the sick building for the functions you are really continuing in, etc., etc. But just I would recommend really just do not recommend anything yet.
Thank you, hocam. Thank you.
Thank you, Çağla. The next one is Özlem Dilara Gültaş. Her topic is being a female engineer in the energy sector in Turkey.
Hi everyone, can I share my screen?
Sure, please.
Okay, just a minute. Can you see, I think?
Yes.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Dilara. I'm doing my master at Kadir Has University in Sustainable Development Program. And today I will present being a female engineer in energy sector in Turkey. My aim is for this study is filling gap in Turkish energy sector and gender approach in literature and comparing with global literature and Turkish conditions. Here, my plan is first starting with introduction and explain what is the problem on subject. Then I will show some research on my topic. After that, I will focus on discussion and interviews, which I did female engineer in energy sector. And then I will conclude. Firstly, I want to mention about women position in energy sector according to International Renewable Energy Association 2019 report. In the slide, you can see the percentage of 3 different areas. Firstly, I want to focus on average share of women in conventional sector, which means oil and gas sector, and it is only 22%, and average share of women in unconventional sector, which is renewable energy sector, is 32%. Unfortunately, STEM has the lowest score. When we evaluate Turkish history, professional engineering was brought to Turkey in the early periods of Republican reforms with its pre-given masculine codes. These codes articulated Turkey's strict gendered structure. And when it is focused on reasons of inequalities, 40% of men and 75% of women believe that these reasons of inequalities are lack of STEM background, lack of gender targets, discouraging workplace strategies, lack of awareness of opportunities, gender roles, or cultural and social norms, and so on. Here, when I searched literature, I found many arguments about the topic, and I decided to divide my literature review in 2 parts. First part is about women employment in energy sector, and the second part is about engineering. Here you can see some of them in the slide. And I also tried to find some statistics from Turkey, but unfortunately there is no statistics or specific number on energy sector for us. So I decided to use educational information, and I used YÖK 2017 report. According to report, 219,590 male and 61,861 female students. Sorry. In engineering, and each sub-branch are doing their education. Also, according to 2020 data announced by the Union of Chamber of Engineers and Architects of Turkey, we call TMOP, the number of female and male engineers registered are in the chamber is 138,960 and 459,477 respectively. On the other hand, this number is not so high or less, I cannot say this, but women employment ratio is lower than educational process. I mentioned before early period of Republican reform. Thanks to that, there is still considerable ratio of women engineers in Turkey, but they are facing some problem like sexual jokes, stigmatizing connotation that undermining women's technical competency, and equating professionalization with masculinity. Here I put an example from my research. While I was doing my research, I read too many arguments about discrimination, but this one is weird for me. Here, one girl wanted to speak with a female engineer for her dissertation and asked her number, but male engineer was surprised and started to make a joke about his female colleague. For him, Nevin, that female engineer, doesn't count as woman because she acts like a man according to his biases, but also doesn't count as a man and not included man club because she's a woman. When the topic came to engineering skills, he was more surprised and dubbed the answer. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, I thought I lost you. When I read these arguments, I want to focus on woman engineer in the sector, and I did 10 interviews with female engineers from different departments and company in energy sector. Yeah. Now I want to turn my interviews. Firstly, I asked, of course, personal question, and I turned to my point. While my first question was, do you believe that the energy sector is male-dominant field? And all of them, only except one, said yes or absolutely yes. That person who didn't say yes, she explained herself and she said, I don't have enough information. I work in public institution and I was elected with KPSS. And then the second question was, do you think female employment in energy sector is low? Almost each one said yes, and they believe that also the number is increasing day by day. My third question is, if you think it is less, what do you think are the reasons for this situation? When I combine the answers, I try to make a group them. One of the answer was about equal opportunity. You know, in Turkey, our constitution, we have equal rights for education for girls and boys. But in reality, girls do not have equal opportunity in education process. Like our family and our society have an expectation about our jobs, and they are suggested some certain jobs considered suitable for women due to traditional and social stereotypes. That's why some of these engineers believe that engineering department do not produce enough graduation. And the other one is social roles. In every society, we have social roles, and it's kind of strictly divided. And women in family life, they are expecting from us being a good wife, being a good mother, and so on. Also from the employer part, these conditions are a struggle, because if you have a child, you don't want to go to business trip, for example. I'm just saying something. The other struggle is filed condition. I never visit any field, but I heard a few stories. Even toilet is a problem for female engineers. Also, the working shifting and working at weekend are the reasons that reduce women employment process. Motherhood maybe we can combine with social roles, but when a woman became a mother, she gained more responsibility, I can say. Wage gap is another struggle, because one of my female engineers said to me, even she had experienced wage gap in the same job between her male colleague. My fourth question is, I ask their suggestion. I can summarize in two parts. One of is business part. They suggested mentoring or creating a career path for female engineer in the company. The other part is more complex one. They demand liberation from being a female, being a mother or wife. They said we need social change. Other question, I wonder, do them think that being a woman leaves them behind their male colleagues in their company? I was surprised, because their first reaction always no, but they continue with usually no, but in some cases, or when we look at some point, we can see male employees are getting higher, something like that. My next question was, have they received any good or bad comments from their colleagues or manager due to being a woman? And what were these comments? Here you can see the answer. I don't want to be too detailed, but some of them is important for me. For example, the first one, a male manager, when she said that she want to involve in joint decision at the company, he said, you should go play with your babies. I cannot imagine the position. Another answer was, in a heated discussion about technical issue she got into at work, and the male manager said he will never hire a female engineer again. Also, another example, she heard many sexual or inappropriate jokes about women in a situation. Next one, I will summarize. Sorry, I don't want to take your time so much. I asked effects about family life. Generally, they mentioned about business trips affect their family life, because they have to specific gender roles in their family, and their family and their suppose way too much things from female engineers. Being a female friendly question, I asked, working conditions should be female friendly, and the answer yes, and also explained this action would bring improvement for sector. The last question was, I asked exactly their company's work condition. Generally, they are not sure about that, because, okay, they say yes, but in case their company also lost the route, and for example, one of them said their HR department are totally female friendly, but energy department where she works is not the same, has not the same condition. In conclusion, according to interview which I did female engineers in the sector, it can be said that today's conditions support the literature or gender issue, and women I can recommend that, actually everyone recommend that women should be encouraged on STEM and energy sector with gendered policies. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you prefer Özlem or Dilara?
Dilara hocam.
Okay, Dilara. The first thing I want to say is, although I am not really experienced researcher in this kind of interview techniques, though I know some people who can, it is better if you just motivate your paper a little bit more. So I'm just sending you a PDF from the chat. It is not directly related with engineers and energy sector. It is more related with female participation in research and innovation, though it would, I guess you would benefit from it. Can you say it from the chat, Dilara?
Yeah, I opened it already.
Yeah, great. So you just take a look at it in order to motivate your paper better. Okay, this is the first thing. The second thing is that while you're presenting your results, so you interviewed 10 engineers from the energy sector, and you just give us detailed answers of these individuals. What I would suggest that you should take a look at like kind of text analytics in this kind of interview studies. It would help you instead of giving all the answers of individuals participated in the interview. Besides, do you plan to increase the sample size a little bit? You haven't mentioned about the selection of the sample. You said only 10 engineers, female engineers, but in these kind of studies, sample selection bias could be a really problem. So you must increase the number. I used
snowball technique when I did.
Okay, great. But still, it would be better if you can increase the number of interviews in the upcoming. So you are planning to use it in your thesis, right?
Yeah, I hope, hocam.
Yeah, hope. Okay, great. So it would be better, and it is also better if you use some more, so to say, sophisticated techniques with your outputs from your interviews. Okay, like text analytics or some quantitative techniques.
Okay.
Yeah, you can normalize it. You can just ask some sort of like Likert scale questions, so then you can have some quantitative data also. Okay, Dilara?
Okay, thank you, hocam.
No worries. And any questions or answers or questions or comments from that? Yes,
may I make a couple of comments?
Yeah, sure, please go ahead.
Well, Dilara, I was very excited when I read the headline of your presentation, but I couldn't see what I was expecting, really. First of all, if you are taking Turkey as an example, you could really tell us, it's easy, available information, how many engineers are graduating, and so far, what are the number of female engineers in Turkey, and how many of them are in or at work at the age of working life. This is a very important input really for your work, and you should start really making some details from that. I can see you've started quite a nice exercise, but it's really not very satisfying from my point of view. As Istemi suggested, I can suggest one recent publication, one report really, probably you follow McKinsey reports. A McKinsey 2020 Woman in the Workplace is very eye-opening report. You can see the actual approach, methodology, and how they really did it professionally. It might lead you a better presentation and a better work. Thank you.
Thank you, hocam. I will check it.
Okay, I guess there is no any question, and I'm closing the session.
Thank you very much, Istemi hocam, by the way.
No worries, and also to Şener hocam, we have a special thank to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for contributing. Thank you, Istemi hocam.
No worries, and I would like to also thank the participants, the audience, and the participants of this session. So, what was the order? Aynur, Berk, and then we had who? Çağla, and then Dilara. Okay. So I would like to thank all of them for great presentations. And also now I can see my professor, Professor Ediger. And I would like to thank him and Erkan and Hazal and all the personnel who helped us to organize this conference. And the final words goes to Professor Volkan Ediger, I guess. Professor Ediger, would you like to say something?
Yok, ben yokum ben. Şener Hoca konuşacak. Ben sadece son sözleri Şener Hocam söyleyecek. Ben sizlere bir teşekkür edeyim. Hepinize gerçekten inanılmaz. Şener Hocam bir kere size gerçekten yürekten teşekkür ediyorum. Bütün bir gününüzü buraya harcadınız. Çok değerli katkılarda bulundunuz. Sağ olun, var olun.
Hocam keyif aldım. İnan ki keyif aldım.
Çok güzeldi. Evet, ben de hepsini dinledim. Bazen arabada, bazen yolda. Telefonum hep yanımdaydı. Hepinize, özellikle Hazal'a, Erkan'a, bütün düzenleyenlere, tebliğ verenlere, İstemi'ye, diğer hocalarımıza yürekten teşekkür ediyorum. Ben bu kadar söyleyeceğim. Söz
Şener Hocam'dan. Tamam.
Okay, thank you very much once more. Since it is international, let's finish in English. It was quite a nice, efficient day. I enjoyed it. I hope you all did. There were very interesting presentations from the morning up to now. They were trying to address the green and sustainable energy issues, energy efficiency, innovation, energy market regulation, energy security, geopolitics at the level. Some of them were very high, some of them were mediocre. But it is a process of development. Thank you very much to everyone. And it was a successful 5th graduate student conference. And those guys who made this reality, starting from Hazal, Erkan, Hakan, Dimitros, Dilara, Saliha, and Rahman, I do thank you all, organizing committee, for your effort. And I look forward to the 6th one next year. I hope we'll have a more stronger presentation, and we are expecting contribution of those session chairs. Thank you very much once more to you all. Have a nice evening. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Kapatıyoruz o zaman.
Okay.
Okay. See
See you
all.
next year, you should say, Erkan.
See you next year.
See you next year.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.